We often focus on all the pretty sights around us, but sometimes the things and places left behind are more interesting. Let's take a look at these 7 strange abandoned places in Europe. Number 7. Reschensee, Italy. Reschensee, or Lake Reschen, is located on the borders where Italy, Switzerland, and Austria meet. At first glance, you might think this man-made lake was just like any other lake in the world. Sure, it's beautiful, and the mountains surrounding it make it feel almost dreamlike. But take a closer look and you'll see a legitimate bell tower sticking out of the water. Obviously, Lake Reschen is not just your average lake. For centuries, there were 2 towns, Graun and Reschen, sharing this valley in the Alps. In 1939, the local power company needed to find a way to supply energy for citizens in the entire region. Essentially, they wanted to completely submerge the 2 towns in order to have a year-round power supply. Obviously, the citizens of the towns were not on board with the plan. But 11 years later, in 1950, the towns were underwater. The only thing that is visible from the town now is the bell tower from Graun's 14th century church. The scene is breathtaking and slightly haunting. With an old bell tower coming out of the depths of the lake, visitors can only imagine what the towns look like on the bottom. Today, Reschensee still attracts thousands of visitors for photo ops. Unfortunately, diving in the lake is not allowed, so no one will ever know what it looks like under the surface of the water. Maybe leaving that part to its mystery is enough. Many visitors have mentioned how not knowing what the town looks like at the bottom of the lake is almost scarier. Number 6. Lennox Castle Hospital, Scotland. Deep in the countryside of Glasgow, Scotland, lies an abandoned psychiatric hospital. The old Lennox Castle Hospital used to be ahead of its time. When it was built in the 1830s, it was primarily going to serve as a castle, and it did for many years. However, in 1925, the Glasgow Council needed a space to house their new program for the mentally deficient. Obviously, some restorations and add-ons had to be completed in order to convert the castle into an operational psychiatric hospital. The whole operation cost over £1 million, or $12 million in USD. Just because it had great supplies and equipment does not mean that it was the greatest psychiatric hospital of all time. For decades, patients were treated at this hospital, but they weren't necessarily treated fairly. The fact is, the psychiatric program had very little staff who believed in its mission and very little support outside of the council. Funds were depleting, so the place started deteriorating rather quickly. Patients were often abused and starved, according to their family members. As patient numbers dwindled, the Lennox Castle Hospital started moving towards its official closing in the year 2002. The patients that were left were simply pushed back into society or transferred to other programs. The castle has been abandoned since then. Croix Rouge Metro, France. Paris welcomes millions of tourists every year. These tourists take in the sights like the Eiffel Tower, the Arc de Triomphe, and the Louvre. But right between their feet lies something rich in history and slightly creepy that is perfect for adventure junkies. Croix Rouge is an abandoned subway station located in central Paris. In 1923, the station was a stop on the 10th line as part of the Paris Metro. It closed in 1939 so it could be used for military purposes. After the war ended, it never reopened. Rumor has it that the Croix Rouge will be transformed into an urban underground hangout spot, complete with a restaurant, swimming pool, and bar. Actually, this plan is supposedly going to be applied to all 16 abandoned subway stations scattered throughout Paris. It is part of a new program called Reinvent Paris. Some of the other stations still have decor from the World War II time period. Croix Rouge is decked with colorful, spray-painted walls after years of being vandalized. Some functioning lights give it a dim, gloomy look, which definitely adds to the ominous vibe. Croix Rouge and all the other abandoned stations are blocked off during the year, but some of them open for Paris's annual heritage celebrations. These blockades are pretty difficult to get around. and it's flat out illegal. Paris police aren't messing around when it comes to their subway stations. It's better to visit in the summer when they open some of them for the general public. Number 4. Restaurante Panoramico, Portugal. Back in the 1960s, a brand new restaurant with futuristic architecture opened in Lisbon, Portugal. The Restaurante Panoramico sat high on a hill and overlooked the heart of Lisbon. The architecture was ahead of its time. Back then, it looked like a work of art, not a restaurant. This, combined with its view of Lisbon, was the perfect combination for attracting customers willing to pay. The amazing view was a blessing and a curse, however. When it first opened, it was all the craze, so of course, people were willing to make the trip out of the city to dine at the hottest new restaurant. However, as time went on, a general disinterest settled among Lisbon citizens and tourists because it was so far out of the way from public transport and the main downtown area. Also, it was one of those experiences where once someone visited, they never needed to come back. The restaurant officially closed in 2001 and the building has been abandoned ever since. Now it looks like it could be a great set for a sci-fi or thriller movie. But efforts to renovate it always fall short. Everyone wants it to be preserved, but unfortunately nobody is willing to do the work. At least the views are still nice. Number 3. Teufelsberg, Germany. Teufelsberg was an active listening station for the U.S. during the Cold War. Signals could be intercepted here and translated in order for the U.S. to get ahead of the pesky Russians controlling East Germany. The station was used until the Berlin Wall fell. Since then, no renovations have taken place, so it is simply an empty, vandalized station. It is illegal to visit Teufelsberg, but some thrill seekers have found unique ways to get into the facility. Wild boars live around the area and the building itself has not been taken care of in almost 3 decades, so visitors need to take extreme caution. Number 2. Buzlucha, Bulgaria. Buzlucha, much like the Restaurante Panoramico in Portugal, looks like an abandoned spaceship, only this time it is a lot less discreet. The Buzlucha Monument is a sight to behold. It is a massive structure that sits high up in the mountains of Bulgaria. You really can't miss it, even from far away. Its technical name, the Memorial House of the Bulgarian Communist Party, perfectly describes what the structure's function was. It technically opened in 1981 when Bulgaria was in the midst of a socialist movement. The citizens funded the entire process of building and dedicating it. The planning process for Buzlucha, however, spans all the way back to 1971. The proposal and planning for the whole operation lasted nearly a decade before it was finally built. The whole purpose of Buzlucha was to pay honor and respect to the socialist movement sweeping throughout Bulgaria. Towards the end of the 80s, when Bulgaria officially became a democratic nation, the structure became utterly useless. With no movement to support, nobody knew what to do with this extravagant and dramatic monument. After all, it was dedicated to a cause that at the time seemed to have no end in sight. Today, the Buzlucha monument is covered under an aptly named Buzlucha project. This project essentially seeks to conserve and protect the monument, and then eventually convert it into a museum. The museum will explain in depth the entire history and purpose of the Buzlucha monument itself while not hiding it or glorifying it. Number 1. Kakkola Prison, Finland. Kakkola Prison is located in southwest Finland in the city of Turku. This prison officially opened in the 1840s and housed some of Finland's most prominent criminals. Later on, a psychiatric ward was added, giving the prison a whole new crowd. The prison was fully operational until 2007, when the prisoners were moved to a new location. Nobody could do anything with the previous Kakkola building, so it was simply abandoned. The dark, ominous feeling that Kakkola Prison gives off is perfect for TV shows and movies that need to film in a prison setting. It is also perfectly attractive to thrill seekers who want to completely bypass a tour and just sneak in themselves. Today, there are plans to turn Kakkola Prison into an upscale hotel, including a wedding chapel. Would you get married in a renovated prison? Better yet, would you step foot in one?